CBS News State Department reporter Kylie Atwood joins me to talk about the secretary's trip. Welcome, Kylie.
Thank you.
So he's going to be going to Saudi Arabia and Qatar. We know the two countries have this beef with each other. The White House has been kind of wishy-washy on where they stand. What do you think Tillerson's going to achieve on this?
Well, I think it's a hard question, and I can tell you one thing, which is that the State Department hasn't set expectations high for what Tillerson is going to be able to do on this trip. I mean, he's gone to Saudi Arabia before, he's gone to Qatar, and he's tried to be the mediator, right? But at the same time, the White House has consistently offered to be the mediating area for this issue. And I just want to remind folks that this started 4 months ago. So this is an ongoing crisis. And why it matters to the U.S. is because the U.S. has their largest military base in the region based in Qatar. And they also have very strong ties with the Saudis and with the other countries that have imposed this blockade on Qatar for essentially harboring terrorists, for supporting terrorist groups in the region. And so Tillerson's going to have his hand at it again, but they're not saying necessarily that he's going to produce a certain outcome. He's just going at it again in person.
He's also going to India and Pakistan, which has been fascinating to watch that dynamic. You know, President Obama and previous presidents haven't taken a side on that. They know that they've needed Pakistan as a vital ally. But where do you see, how do you see this shaping up? We had that raid recently where those Canadian family was released.
Yeah, so Caitlin Coleman's family recently was released from Pakistan, and obviously that shed a more positive light on the U.S.-Pakistani relations than we have seen even just a few months ago when President Trump laid out his Afghanistan policy at the end of August. He was sure to say that the U.S. is not going to be involved in nation building anymore. He said that they're going to kind of take a step back and try and look at a regional approach to Afghanistan. And in doing so, he came down really harshly on Pakistan, saying that the U.S. is not going to be quiet any longer when it comes to Pakistan and harboring terrorists. And so the thought is that a lot of the terrorist groups that are creating the awful violence that we continue to see in Afghanistan are based in Pakistan. And so Trump said, we're going to signal out Pakistan, and Tillerson's followed up on that. And he basically has said that the U.S. support for Pakistan is going to be hinged upon what they can do in the region and what they can produce in terms of fighting terrorists. So that's going to be the hardline approach that Tillerson delivers in person with Pakistan. And he'll also have to face the reality that Trump wants to pull India into Afghanistan policy now. And as you said before, the Pakistanis and India just have historically not had good relations. And so the Pakistani foreign minister was actually in D.C. last week and told me that he's been assured by the administration that involving India isn't going to come at the expense of Pakistan. So the U.S. is going to try and see, how they can talk about that with them.
I want to ask you also about North Korea, fascinating topic. We've seen Tillerson pushing for diplomacy. We've heard President Trump say it's a waste of time. Where do we see that heading?
Well, the last word that we heard on this was from Secretary Tillerson over the weekend on Face the Nation. And he said very bluntly that diplomacy will continue until the first bomb is dropped. So that's the way that Tillerson is looking at this. And as you said, though, I mean, the White House has been a little bit harsher, saying that Tillerson is wasting his time on talks with North Korea and that that's not going to be the productive way forward. But I think what's important to recognize here is that the administration is using military force as a possibility, but even if talks aren't directly happening between the U.S. and North Korea, diplomacy and trying to corner in North Korea is something that the U.S. is focused on. So they want these countries to cut their diplomatic ties, cut their economic ties, and of course, that comes to China. And there's a lot of pressure on China right now to do that.
Absolutely, and the president's heading there in November to China as well.
Exactly.
What are you hearing about the situation with dealing with China?
Well, the U.S. has been patient. I mean, they've been, waiting for China to step up, and China has made some progress in this realm that maybe they didn't expect before. They did vote for UN Security Council resolutions back in August, which tamped down on some of the imports going into North Korea. And China has also said that they are, part of the international force trying to get North Korea to stop launching missiles and building its nuclear program. But Tillerson this week, when he was talking about India in a public speech in D.C., he also said that China is a country that is disobeying the international order as it's risen to power. And so what the U.S. might be able to do is look at its relationship with India, which Tillerson will be highlighting on his trip this week, and use that as leverage to say, China, you are obviously a world player and incredibly important world player, as we saw Xi talk about this week to the Party Congress, but it's also, we're recognizing that India is a growing power economically in the region, and if we are able to get closer with China, get closer with India, that might help us in deterring China to work with us.
Kylie Atwood, who covers the State Department for us. Great to have you here in New York, Kylie.
Thank you, Rena.